In a small village, a man was walking along a dirt road late in the afternoon. It was an ordinary day. Nothing seemed out of place. Until suddenly, a sound cut through the air. An arrow flew through space and struck the man with force. He fell to the ground, overwhelmed by pain. Some people who were nearby ran toward him. When they got closer, they noticed something even more serious. The tip of the arrow was covered in poison. They had to act quickly. If the arrow was not removed immediately, the poison would begin to spread through his body. One of the men knelt beside the wounded man, ready to pull the arrow out. But before he could touch it, the injured man raised his hand and stopped him. Even with the pain clearly visible on his face, he said that no one should touch the arrow. First, he needed to understand what had happened. Who had fired that arrow? Was it someone from the village or a stranger? Where had that person come from? What kind of bow had been used? And what kind of wood had the arrow been made from? The people around him were confused. Time was precious. The poison would not wait for answers. They tried to convince him that those things could be discovered later. The most important thing was to remove the arrow. But he insisted. He said he would not allow the arrow to be removed until all his questions were answered. While he demanded explanations, time continued to pass. And little by little, the poison continued its silent path through his body. And before any answer could be found, the man died. This story is known as the parable of the poisoned arrow. It appears in ancient Buddhist teachings associated with Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha, who lived around the 5th century before Christ in northern India. Within that tradition, the story was used to illustrate a very common pattern of the human mind. When facing urgent problems, we often search for complex explanations before dealing with what is directly in front of us. The man in the parable did not die only because of the arrow. He died because he refused to act until he fully understood every detail of the situation. The story is often used to question a tendency that has followed humanity for a very long time. The attempt to solve the great mysteries of existence first. Questions such as, what is the origin of the universe? What happens after death? What is the ultimate nature of reality? These are fascinating questions, but according to this teaching, they can become a distraction when they pull us away from what needs to be addressed right now. In the parable, the arrow represents human suffering, conflicts, pain, insecurities, and difficulties that are part of life. The poison represents the time that passes while we avoid dealing with those problems. And the search for absolute explanations represents something very common in our minds, the desire to understand everything before taking action. But life rarely waits for complete answers. Often, wisdom is not about discovering who fired the arrow. It is about recognizing that the arrow is there and that something needs to be done. Perhaps the parable is not only about a man in a distant village. Perhaps it is about something all of us do at some point in life. While we try to understand everything, time keeps passing, and the poison keeps working.